if I have to pause it, I know I can pause it and come back to it in a little bit because I'm waiting to get pulled back to go get unloaded here in Gladwin, Michigan. This is the last week of doing these solar panel runs for this area. And, there you go. I just cracked my neck a little bit. So we left off at Luke chapter 23. We're going to start getting into where Jesus faces Pilate, and then the people are like giving clues of like Barabbas. But really quick, I thought I'd mention something about something. These last few weeks, and it's kind of sad to hear it from people. And it's not just one incident or one person telling me this, but a couple of them have been people that claim to be Christians or co-workers. Find out I'm single and then tell me, and then they try to tell me don't get married because it's not worth it. And these are people that they have marriages, and it's like God calls us to get married though, and I might not be married right now, but if it's something that's Christ-centered, and if it's like a true like relationship also that you have with somebody, like how is it not worth it? Especially if it's somebody that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And then when you bring Christ into it, it even amplifies it even better. So like, I pray for people in this world, because indoctrination has, through Hollywood and other means, have taught people that men are only out there to chase sex and instant gratifications instead of a fulfilling, actual, nurtured relationship. And because a marriage isn't just about like one-sided thing. It's not putting a woman below you as a man or above you as a man, but coming side by side and working together. And then the respect and love and submission to each other that's prescribed throughout the Bible is it's reflected in different ways. Like a man and a woman are going to have different ways to show that, like, to each other. And but yeah, it's definitely worth it. So if anybody tells you that it's not worth it and you're not married yet, don't listen to them. Don't give them any second thought. So now I'm going to read Luke chapter 23. Then their whole assembly rose up and brought him before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked them, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered, "You say so." Pilate then told the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no grounds for charging this man." But they kept insisting, "He stirs up the people," teaching throughout all Judea from Galilee, where he started, even to here. Jesus faces Herod Antipas. When Pilate heard this, he asked if the man was Galilean. Finding that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem during those days. Herod was very glad to see Jesus. For a long time he had wanted to see him because he had heard about him and was hoping to see some miracle performed by him. So he kept asking questions, but Jesus did not answer him. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt, mocked him, dressed him in bright clothing, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Herod and Pilate became friends. previously they had been enemies. So it's interesting because Pilate is trying to, like, he's like, this guy's innocent. I don't want to do anything. And then him and Herod become friends over, like, the accusations of Christ, in a way. And, probably to make, because Pilate was probably thinking of terms of, like, if I don't do certain things, then there might be an uprising against Rome. And so Jesus or Barabbas. Pilate called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people, and said to them, "You have brought me this man as one who misleads the people, but in fact, after examining him in your presence, I have found no grounds to charge this man with those things you accuse him of. Neither has Herod, because he sent him back to us. Clearly, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will have him whipped and then release him." Then they all cried together, "Take this man away, release Barabbas to us." He had been thrown into prison for rebellion that had taken place in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate addressed them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." Okay, so I misread that. So Pilate and Herod became friends because neither one of them found fault, and that was probably like one of the first times they actually like spoke to each other, considering their different ranks within the governmental systems. Third time, so they said, crucify him a third time. Because Pilate addressed them because he wanted to release him. It's like, why? What has this man done wrong? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him whipped and then release him. But they kept up the pressure, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified. And their voices won out. So Pilate decided to grant their demand and release the one they were asking for, who had been thrown into prison for rebellion and murder. But he handed Jesus over to their will. Because it was like the people were getting probably pretty rowdy, and he probably got freaked out. It was like, alright, I have no choice. The way to the cross. As they led him away, they seized Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming in from a country, and laid the cross on him to carry behind Jesus. A large crowd of people followed him, including women who were mourning and lamenting him, but turning to them, Jesus said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. Look, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the women without children, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it's dry?" So it's like a prophetic thing about before his second coming. Crucified between two criminals. Two others, criminals, were also led away to be executed with him. When they arrived at the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on the right hand and one on the left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they are doing." And they divided his clothes and casted lots. The people stood watching, and even the leaders were scoffing. "He saved others. Let him save himself, if this is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him. They came offering him sour wine and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." An inscription was above him, "This is the King of the Jews." And then one of the criminals hanging there began to yell insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other answered, rebuking him, Don't you even fear God, since you are undergoing the same punishment? We are punished justly because we're getting back what we deserve for the things we did, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And he said to him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." So that the criminal on the cross there, he confesses sin and professed Jesus was who he said he is, and the death of Jesus. It was about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3, because the sun's light failed. The curtain of the sanctuary was split down the middle, and Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit." Saying this, he breathed his last breath. When the centurion saw what happened, he began to glorify God, saying, "This man really was righteous." All the crowds that had gathered for the spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, went home striking their chests. But all who knew him, including the woman who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. And then the burial. There was a good and righteous man named Joseph, a member of the Sanhedrin, who had not agreed with the other plan in action. He was from Arimathea, a Judean town, and was looking forward to the kingdom of God. He approached Pilate, asked for Jesus' body. Taking it down, he wrapped it in fine linen and placed it in a tomb cut into the rock where no one had ever been placed. It was the preparation day. The Sabbath was about to begin. The woman who had come with him from Galilee followed along and observed the tomb, how his body was placed. Then they returned, prepared spices and perfumes, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the commandment. And then I'll read chapter 24 really quick too, because it's not very long. It's the last chapter of the book of Luke, resurrection morning. So 3 days about went by. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came to the tomb. Bringing spices they had prepared, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. They went in, but did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men stood by them in dazzling clothes. So the women were terrified and bowed down to the ground. "Why are you looking for the living among the dead?" asked the men. "He is not here, but he has risen. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee, saying, 'It is necessary that the Son of Man be betrayed into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and rise on the 3rd day.'" And they remembered his words. Returning from the tomb, they reported all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them are telling the apostles these things, but these words seemed like nonsense to them, and they did not believe the women. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. When he stooped to look, he saw only the linen clothes, so he went away amazed at what had happened. So that is one of the first times that people will acknowledge that women are used as witnesses and disciples for Jesus. I got excited. I thought they were telling me to move, so I paused this really quick. And they weren't telling me to move. They were just going to their powwow after lunch. The Emmaus disciples. Now, the same day, 2 of them were on their way to a village called Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Together, they were discussing everything that had taken place, and while they were discussing and arguing, Jesus himself came near and began to walk with them, but they were prevented from recognizing him. Then he asked them, "What is this dispute that you're having with each other?" As you were walking, and they stopped walking and looked discouraged. The one man, Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that happened here in these days? What things? He asked them. So they said to him, the things concerning of Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, powerful in action and speech before God and all the people, and how our chief priests, leaders, handed him over to be sentenced to death. They crucified him. But we were hoping that he was the one who was about to redeem Israel. Besides all this, it's the third day since these things happened. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They arrived early at the tomb, and when they didn't find his body, they came and reported that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they didn't see him. And he said to him, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Wasn't it necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and enter into his glory? Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. They came near the village where they were going, and he gave the impression that he was going further. But they urged him, stay with us, because it's almost evening, and now the day is almost over, so he went to stay with them. It was as he reclined at the table with them that he took the bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. They said to each other, weren't our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road, explaining the scriptures to us? That very hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. They found the 11, and those with them gathered together, who said, the Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon. Then they began to describe what had happened on the road and how he was made known to them in the breaking of bread. That would be awesome. And it kind of reminds me of, Jesus breaks the bread and then he vanishes. Like after he gives it out to him, and they realize, oh, we were sitting with Jesus just now. And it reminds me, when I was selling the glow-in-the-dark sticks, it was one time up at Traverse City Music Festival. I was selling, and then there was this man who kind of looked like a Native American, but because he had that little bit of darker skin, but I wasn't sure. And I remember this guy, he was watching the person that was on the drums. He looked over at me, he smiled, he nodded his head. I heard somebody yell out, hey, glow stick man, over here. And then so I turned, thinking there was somebody wanting to buy some stuff for me. There was nobody there. And then when I turned back, and it was like a split second thing, this guy was gone. You didn't see him walking anywhere. The crowd wasn't big enough to miss him walking away, but that is something that has actually happened to me. So was it an angel? Was it Jesus himself? Who knows? The reality of the risen Jesus. As they were saying these things, he himself stood in their midst. He said to them, peace to you. But they were startled and terrified and thought they were seeing a ghost. Why are you troubled? He asked them, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see, because a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you can see I have. Having said this, he showed them his hands and feet, but while they were still amazed and in disbelief because of their joy, he asked them, do you have anything here to eat? So they gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He told them, these are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures. He also said to them, this is what is written. The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead the third day, and repentance for forgiveness of sins will be proclaimed in his name to all the nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things, and look, I am sending you, who my Father promised. As for you, stay in the city until you are empowered from on high. Then, now we go into the ending of Luke chapter 24, starting at verse 50, the ascension of Jesus. Then he led them out to the vicinity of Bethany and lifted up his hands. He blessed them, and while he was blessing them, he left them, was carried up into heaven. After worshiping him, they returned to Jerusalem with great joy and were continually in the temple praising God. And that ends Luke chapter 24. And then it's like God gives us a mission sometimes. He tells us to wait until it's known to you, or until I fully give it to you, that true mission I have for you is going to start. And but yeah, praise Jesus, because he is risen, and we will see him one day, and we will also receive glorified bodies one day as well. So, with that, I hope you have a good day.